Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories.
I never thought coming home after a date would freak me out this bad. Like it started normal. We grabbed dinner, laughed way too much, and things felt easy, nothing crazy. Just a chill night. We met at that cozy little restaurant downtown that neither of us had been to before, the kind with dim lights and music so low you had to lean in to hear each other. I remember thinking how rare it was to find someone who actually made me forget to check my phone every few minutes. He was charming, that kind of charm that felt effortless, not rehearsed. The conversation flowed easily like we'd known each other forever, even though this was only our third date. We joked about silly stuff, shared stories about our worst jobs, and I laughed until my cheeks hurt. There was a warmth about him, a casual confidence that made me want to leave in something real. After dinner, we walked a little, just wandering through the streets, stopping to look at some street art, and he kept brushing his fingers lightly against my hand. I felt a flutter. Maybe this was the start of something good. Or at least, that's what I told myself as he walked me to the door of my apartment building. He gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "Text me when you get inside safe." I smiled and nodded and watched him walk away into the night. That's when everything went sideways. The door was locked exactly how I left it. I swiped my key, stepped inside, dropped my bag by the door, and headed straight for the bathroom. I wanted to wash off the night, freshen up, wipe off the makeup, and just settle in. The place smelled like lavender and my favorite candle I'd lit earlier. Everything was quiet, normal. Then I saw it. Right there, scrawled across the bathroom mirror in bitty, uneven letters, was a message. Written with what had to be my own lipstick, the very shade I was wearing that night. But the message wasn't random. It was something so weirdly specific, a detail from our date that I never told anyone else. Like the name of a little cafe he mentioned wanting to visit, something that came up in a joke between us, just a throwaway line no one else would know. My brain short-circuited. I stood frozen, staring at the words that weren't just creepy but downright personal. How the hell did that get there? I hadn't seen anyone enter. I was sure I'd locked the door behind me when I left. The hallway was empty when I came up. Nothing out of place. I looked around my apartment, heart thumping so loud it drowned out every other sound. The place looked normal, nothing knocked over, nothing missing. But that message on the mirror wasn't normal. Not at all. I replayed everything from the night before. Did I forget to lock the door? No, I was sure. The way I habitually checked it twice before heading out, that's always been me. And the landlord. No way he'd just walk in. I haven't given anyone a spare key. Except, could my date have one? No, that didn't make sense. We'd only been dating a couple of weeks. He'd never even been inside my place before tonight. But what if he slipped in while I was out? The idea made my stomach twist. Maybe when I wasn't paying attention, he got key copied or found a way to sneak in. That wasn't just weird, it was terrifying. I went over every moment of the date again, trying to find clues. Was he watching me? Was the little stuff he mentioned during dinner all part of some game? I remembered the way he smiled, like he knew something I didn't. The way he glanced around like he was familiar with more than just the restaurant. It suddenly felt like every casual comment, every funny anecdote was layered with meaning, a way to show he was closer to my life than I'd ever imagined. I walked back to the mirror, touching the message lightly, trying to figure out how long it had been there. The lipstick was still wet. Fresh, meaning someone had to have been in my apartment while I was out, or maybe even while I was asleep. That thought sent chills through me. What if he'd come inside when I wasn't looking? What if he was still here? I couldn't bring myself to turn on the lights fully if I flipped on the hallway lamp. Every shadow suddenly felt like a threat. The living room, the kitchen, all clear. No one there, but that didn't make it any better. It meant he'd been in and left without a trace. I checked every lock. Front door, windows, even the balcony sliding door. Everything was locked tight. Unless he had a key. I thought about calling someone, but what would I say? Hey, I think my date snuck into my place and left me creepy notes. Would the cops even take it seriously? I felt alone in this, like the only one who knew about what was really happening. The next few days were a nightmare. I couldn't sleep without checking every corner of my apartment. Every creak or bump made me jump. I started changing my locks, but the fear didn't go away. What if he had a way in that I hadn't thought of? What if the message on the mirror was just the beginning? I even started avoiding Tinder for a while. The idea that someone could be so close, so inside my life, without me realizing, was haunting. It wasn't just a date gone weird. It was something else entirely. I kept replaying that night over and over. The look in his eyes, the way he said my name like he was reminding me he'd been paying attention to everything. I tried to convince myself it was a prank or a coincidence, but the lipstick on the mirror told a different story. Looking back, that night was the first warning. A silent message I didn't want to read but couldn't ignore. And the scariest part, I still don't know how long he'd been watching, or if he's still around. I thought crashing at Freya's place after our date was a normal move. We'd hit it off, right? Drinks, laughs, that kind of easy vibe where you figure, why not keep it going? Her apartment wasn't anything crazy, just a tiny, kinda cluttered space on the third floor of an old building. Not super fancy, but cozy enough. I figured I'd crash on the couch and head out in the morning. But sometime around 3 a.m. I woke up. It wasn't the usual waking up in someone else's place thing. No random noises or uncomfortable cramps. Just this weird silence. Freya was gone. I blinked around the dim room, expecting to see her maybe in the kitchen or bathroom, but nope. Empty. My first thought was she had to pee or get a smoke or whatever, but something felt off. Her phone was still on the nightstand next to the bed, screen lit up like it never slept. Tinder was open, showing a chat. Curious, I squinted to read the messages. They were from Freya, chatting with someone whose name was just a creepy blank, like a ghost account or something. The text didn't make any sense at first glance, but the more I read, the colder it got. She wasn't talking about random stuff. It was about me. The messages were weird, cryptic, like she was planning something. Not like a surprise party or something cute. More like she was plotting, and I was the centerpiece. She mentioned times and places I didn't recognize, and it wasn't just about me being there or not. There were hints about someone else in the apartment, shadows I hadn't noticed before. I remember glancing around, now way too aware of every dark corner, every creak, every small noise that usually fades into background. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was a joke between her and a friend. But no, it felt real, like those moments in a horror movie where the hero starts piecing together something terrifying but can't yell for help. One message said something about not letting him leave, and another said, he thinks he's alone. My stomach dropped. My brain started flipping through every detail from the night before. The way she glanced nervously at the door, the weird smile when I asked where her roommate was, the strange way she kept the lights low even though it wasn't night yet. Maybe the roommate was the someone else, or maybe it was something worse. I looked around for anything that could explain this. The apartment was small, but I realized I hadn't really checked every inch. I hadn't noticed a second pair of shoes by the door or an extra jacket hanging near the closet. Now everything felt suspicious. I didn't want to freak out, but the silence was suffocating. My phone was in my pocket, but I didn't want to call anyone just yet. What if Freya came back and caught me snooping? What if this was some kind of trap or game? I felt trapped in her apartment with her gone and some unknown plan unfolding. There was this old wooden cabinet near the hallway I hadn't opened. My curiosity mixed with a rising panic, and I found myself walking over, hands trembling. Inside, there was a small box with a bunch of old photos, but what caught my eye was a notebook stuffed behind it. The pages were filled with scribbles, dates, and names, some crossed out, some circled. And my name was there too, written over and over again in messy letters. I flipped through the notebook, feeling more like a character in a nightmare than someone who just had a drink and hung out with a girl they barely knew. There were entries about times I'd been there, what I wore, what I said. It was like she'd been watching me longer than I realized. One page had a rough sketch of her apartment with notes on windows, doors, and escape routes. It was detailed like a plan. Then I heard it, a soft thud from the other side of the apartment. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze listening. Another thud, closer this time. Someone else was definitely here, the chilling thing. Freya's phone messages had mentioned a watcher, someone who wasn't supposed to be seen but was always there. I tiptoed toward the hallway, barely breathing, trying to see around the corner. There was nothing in the dim light except shadows stretching long. But I felt it, eyes on me. The weight of someone waiting. My mind scrambled for options. I could try to sneak out, but the door was down a narrow hall, and if someone was watching, I had no chance to make it. My phone was still dead from earlier, and the battery on her charger wasn't working. It felt like a setup. I was a pawn in something dark, and she was the mastermind. I went back to the bed and grabbed her phone, scrolling through more of the conversation. The last message was sent just a few minutes ago. He's waking up. Time to play. That wasn't a joke or a game. It was a warning. The silence stretched, broken only by the occasional creak from the building settling. I didn't know if Freya was coming back or if the other person was going to step out from the shadows. I felt my skin crawl with every small noise, the rustling of curtains, the faint scrape of a shoe. Minutes felt like hours and my mind raced. I thought about trying to find a weapon, anything I could use if this got worse. There was a kitchen knife in a drawer, but reaching it meant leaving the bed, moving through the apartment. Was that even safe? Suddenly, the lights flickered. The whole room went dark for a second before buzzing back on. My heart slammed. Something about the way the shadows shifted, the way the air felt heavier, told me this wasn't a coincidence. Someone was controlling this. I slid under the covers, phone still clutched in my hand, eyes wide and searching the dark for any sign of movement. Freya had vanished into the night, but whatever she was planning, it wasn't over. The person she'd been texting was here, watching, waiting. And me. I was stuck inside her quiet, creepy apartment, realizing that the girl I thought I'd just had a fun night with was part of something way more twisted. The messages on her phone weren't just words. They were a promise. I don't know how long I stayed frozen there, but morning light eventually spilled through the curtains, weak and untrustworthy. Freya still hadn't returned. Neither had the watcher. I grabbed my phone, which finally had enough juice for a quick call, and bolted for the door. Outside, the world felt normal again, but I knew it wasn't. I wasn't alone the night before, and whatever Freya was planning, it was just beginning. So I thought I was just going on a normal date, right? Met this guy on Tinder, seemed chill enough, nothing sketchy on his profile. We agreed to meet at this cafe downtown. Public place, lots of people, perfect for a first meetup. But then he hit me with, "I'll pick you up," which honestly felt a little weird but also kind of sweet. Like maybe he was just trying to be considerate or something. So I gave him my address. When he showed up, the car looked okay. Nothing fancy but clean. He smiled like he'd been looking forward to this, which made me relax a little. We started driving to the cafe, but after a few minutes, things got weird. Instead of heading to the main road, he took a right turn onto this quiet, narrow street I'd never seen before. The kind of street where the trees hang low and block out the sun, with old houses that looked like no one had lived in them for years. I glanced over, trying to catch his eye, hoping he'd say something about the detour, but he just kept his eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel. I asked where we were going, but he didn't say a word. No smile, no answer, nothing. It was like it suddenly turned invisible, or maybe he was just lost in his own world. Every question I tried to ask got met with silence or a slight shrug. The quiet was the worst part. No music, no sound from his phone, just the car moving through this empty, twisting road. The streetlights flickered on as the sun disappeared, and I started feeling this creeping tension that I couldn't shake. The houses grew fewer, replaced by thick woods that pressed in close on both sides of the road. It felt like we were driving deeper into nowhere. Eventually, the car slowed down and came to a stop in front of a small, run-down cabin. It looked like the kind of place you'd see in one of those horror movies, all cracked windows and overgrown bushes. My heart jumped. This wasn't the cafe. He turned off the engine but didn't say anything. I reached for my phone to call someone or at least check the map, but the screen stayed black. Dead. I must have forgotten to charge it after the day I'd had, and now, of course, no signal either. I looked around, panic starting to bubble up. No streetlights, just the car's weak headlights cutting through the dark. No other cars, no people, no sounds besides the occasional rustle from the woods. I tried to open the door to get out. The lock was jammed. He gave me this cold look, like he was daring me to try anything. My stomach dropped, and I sat back down, suddenly aware of how alone I was, even though I wasn't technically alone. I started scanning the area, hoping maybe someone was nearby, a house with lights on, a porch, anything. But nothing. Just that cabin and thick trees on every side. I remembered the stories people used to tell about places like this, how some people just disappeared and no one ever found out why. I never thought I'd be caught in one of those stories, but here I was. He finally got out of the car and walked around to my side, opening the door. I wanted to run, but I didn't know which way was safe. He didn't say anything but motioned for me to follow him toward the cabin. My legs were shaking, but I didn't argue. Part of me hoped he was just weird and harmless, maybe had a story to tell that would make all of this make sense. Inside, the place smelled like damp wood and something else I couldn't place, like old smoke mixed with mold. The light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered, casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. It was freezing, even though it wasn't that cold outside anymore. He closed the door behind us and locked it again. The click echoed, and I felt my breath catch. I looked at him, trying to find a hint of kindness or reason in his eyes, but it was just cold emptiness, like I was something he'd captured and now didn't know what to do with. I noticed the phone was still dead, so I tried looking around for another way out. There was a window, but it was boarded up tight, no way to break it without making noise. My mind raced through every possible escape plan. Run, fight, scream, but nothing seemed safe. Then I realized the worst part wasn't just being trapped in this creepy cabin. It was that I had no way to reach anyone. No way to tell my friends where I was. No way to call the cops if things went south. I felt completely cut off, like I was stuck in some nightmare loop where the outside world didn't exist. The guy kept watching me like I was a puzzle he almost solved, but wasn't sure what to do with next. I thought about trying to be nice, maybe calm him down or find something in common that could get me out of this. But every time I looked at him, my gut screamed that nothing about this was okay. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time felt twisted. I kept telling myself I just needed to stay calm and wait for a chance to leave. But I couldn't stop thinking about my dead phone, the dark woods outside, and how I had trusted someone I barely knew to pick me up. Eventually, he came back with a small bag. I didn't ask what was inside. The cabin's silence swallowed every sound, and even my own breathing felt loud. I kept watching the door, waiting for a crack of light or the sound of a car engine, hoping for a rescue that didn't come. I didn't know if he planned to keep me there or what his endgame was. I just knew I was stuck somewhere I wasn't supposed to be, with no way out and no way to call for help. The night stretched on, and I realized that agreeing to let him pick me up was the worst decision I'd made in a long time. When morning finally started creeping through the broken curtains, I was still inside that cabin, still trapped, and still not knowing what was going to happen next. My phone still dead, the woods silent, and him watching. I've never felt so small, so alone, and so scared without a single text or call to save me. And I don't think I'll ever agree to be picked up by someone I barely know again. You ever have one of those weird moments where reality feels off? Like you think you're seeing something normal, but then your brain just refuses to accept it. That's how it started with her, the woman I matched with on Tinder. At first, she was super into it, replying fast, texting me all day like she was really interested. It felt kind of refreshing, honestly, because most of the time, people ghost or take forever to answer. But then we finally went on this date, and afterwards she just vanished. No messages, no calls, nothing. I thought maybe she just lost interest or something, but then things got really strange. I started spotting her everywhere. At the gym I go to, in a line at my favorite coffee shop, even once at work. At first, I figured maybe we just had similar schedules or favorite spots. But there was something off about it, like she'd show up just when I wasn't expecting it, always catching me by surprise. And every time I tried to talk to her about it, she'd say she hadn't been there before. Like she flat out denied being anywhere near those places. It got to the point where I started wondering if I was losing it or if she was messing with me on purpose. I asked around, but no one else seemed to notice her. She wasn't on any other dating apps, and when I searched her name, nothing came up. It was like she existed only for me. The first date itself was pretty chill. We met at a small, quiet bar downtown, nothing fancy. She was funny and smart, and we clicked easily. But after that night, she stopped responding to my texts. I tried calling, texting, even sending a few pictures from the date, but all I got was silence. It was like she just disappeared from my life. Then the weird sightings started. The gym was the first place. I was on the treadmill, minding my own business, when I looked up and saw her standing by the water fountain. She caught my eye for a second, then disappeared into the crowd. I thought maybe she was there for a workout, but I never saw her in any classes or using any equipment. I checked the locker room later, but she wasn't there. Next was the coffee shop where I grab a latte every morning. One day, I looked up from my phone and she was sitting alone at a corner table, scrolling through her own phone. I thought about walking over, but she looked so distant, like she wasn't really there. When I asked her if she was a regular, she laughed and said no, she'd never been before. The weirdest place was at work. I was heading into a meeting when I saw her sitting on a bench in the lobby, staring at her phone. I froze for a moment because I didn't expect to see anyone I knew there. But when I approached, she just smiled awkwardly and said she was waiting for someone else. Later, when I asked her if she worked in the building or visited it often, she said no, that she was just passing through. It all didn't add up. How was she everywhere I went, yet she claimed she wasn't? At first, I thought she might have been playing some kind of game, trying to freak me out or maybe test how much attention I paid. But then I started to feel paranoid, like maybe I was the only person who had ever seen her online. I'd even checked her Tinder profile repeatedly, but it kept changing or disappearing for short periods, like someone was editing it or hiding it from me. I told some friends about it, and they thought I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just noticing her more because I'd gone on a date with her, but it felt deeper than that, like she was following me around, but only I noticed. One night, I tried to look up her social media accounts to see if she was real. I found a few profiles with her pictures, but they were either empty or inactive. No posts, no friends, nothing that looked real. It was like she existed only as an image and a name. I even started keeping track of when and where I saw her. Every time I ran into her, it was somewhere I went regularly, but no one else seemed to see her. It was like she was tethered to me somehow, but not connected to the world around me. One afternoon, I decided to confront her about it again. We were at a park near my apartment, and I asked her why she was always showing up where I was. She smiled softly and said she didn't know what I was talking about, that she hadn't been there before. Then she looked at me like I was the crazy one. After that, I started pulling away. I stopped replying to her messages, stopped looking for her. But even then, sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye, sitting across the room in a cafe, walking down the street ahead of me, or just standing there watching. She never said anything, never approached me. Just appeared, then disappeared like a ghost. I tried to tell myself it was all in my head, that maybe I'd just been obsessed with someone who wasn't real or who didn't want to be real. But the whole thing feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. Seeing someone who isn't there, but is always there, always just out of reach. The last time I saw her was at the grocery store. She was standing near the frozen foods aisle, looking at the ice cream like she was deciding what to get. When I tried to go say hi, she turned around and disappeared between the aisles. I looked everywhere, but she was gone. Now, I don't know if she was ever real or if Tinder somehow connected me to something that wasn't supposed to be found. I can't find her profile anymore. No pictures, no name, no trace. Just the memory of a girl who showed up everywhere, but to no one but me. I met this guy named Harry on Tinder. At first, everything seemed normal enough. We matched, started chatting, and agreed to meet up. But from the moment we met in that crowded cafe, something was off. Like he acted like he already knew me. Not in the usual we're getting along way, but like he'd been watching me forever. Like he had some secret history with me that I had no clue about. He called me by nicknames, but not the cute or typical ones either. They were weird little names that didn't fit, names I'd never heard before and didn't recognize, but somehow sounded like they belonged to someone I should know. It was unsettling, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. The nicknames didn't feel affectionate. They felt possessive, like he was marking me in some way. He also mentioned moments and memories, things that sounded like we'd shared them, but I couldn't remember any of them. Like he was describing a parallel version of my life, a timeline I didn't live, but he believed was real. He talked about places I'd never been, conversations I never had, events I didn't attend. Yet he said it all so casually, like he expected me to just nod along and believe him. At first, I thought maybe he was just really into me and trying to create this illusion of closeness. Maybe he was trying to fast track the getting to know you stage by pretending we'd known each other forever. But it was more than that. There was something in the way he looked at me, like he already owned a piece of me or something. It was cold, like a smile hiding a knife. The more time I spent with him, the more those moments piled up. The nicknames, the inside jokes that made no sense to me, the random references to places I never went or conversations I never had. It felt like he was spinning a web around me, making me question my own memories. I kept trying to tell myself I was just overthinking it, that maybe I was just forgetful, or that maybe he was trying to be quirky and affectionate in his own messed up way. But the discomfort lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control over my own story, like someone else was writing the script, and I was just a character in it. I didn't cut him off right away. Maybe I was curious, or maybe I wanted to see where it was going before I freaked out. We went on a few more dates, and things got stranger. Sometimes I'd check my phone and see messages I didn't remember sending or texts that had vanished from my conversations with other people. My Instagram would show new followers I didn't recognize, or my Facebook would have posts I didn't write. It was subtle stuff, like a shadow moving around the edges of my life. At first, I thought maybe my phone was glitching, or maybe I was losing track of things because I was tired or stressed. But the weird feeling kept growing. It felt like there was this other version of me, online, digital, hacked, that Harry had somehow built and was using. Then one day, I was scrolling through the news and saw this story about a guy who was stalking women in a terrifying way. The article said he was hacking their phones, getting into their social media accounts, and creating fake profiles to lure them in. He used what he learned from their digital footprints to make himself sound like someone they already knew, or someone they wanted to know. The article even said he'd call them by fake nicknames, pretend they shared memories, stuff like that to mess with their heads and make them trust him. My stomach dropped. Everything about Harry matched the story too well. The nicknames, the fake shared history, the feeling that he knew me better than I knew myself. I thought back to all those little moments where something felt wrong, but I ignored it. I felt sick and scared, but I knew I had to get away from him. I deleted the app, blocked him everywhere. Tinder, Instagram, Facebook, my phone. But even after cutting off all contact, I couldn't shake the feeling that the version of me he built in his head was still out there somewhere, like he was still watching, still using pieces of my life to create his own twisted story. I started changing all my passwords, setting up two-factor authentication, and asking friends if they'd noticed anything weird on my accounts. Thankfully, no one else had been affected, but the paranoia stuck with me. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, my heart jumped. Every new follower, every message request felt like a potential Harry waiting to crawl out of the shadows. I was constantly checking my phone, my accounts, trying to catch any sign that someone was trying to get inside my life again. It got to the point where I didn't trust anyone online. Every new message, every match on Tinder felt like a test. Could this person really be who they say they are? Or were they another hacker, another person playing a twisted game with my identity? I even deleted Tinder for a while. The idea that someone could hack their way into my life, pretending to be someone real, while I was left wondering what parts of myself were really mine anymore, was haunting. Sometimes I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder, expecting to see him standing there, smiling that cold smile, knowing things he shouldn't. The fear didn't just disappear when I blocked him, it lingered like a shadow on the edges of my life. Looking back, the signs were there all along, but I didn't want to believe them. I wanted to believe in the magic of meeting someone new, in the excitement of a fresh connection. But sometimes, the scariest stories aren't about monsters hiding in the dark. They're about people who get inside your head, inside your life, and make you question everything you thought was real. That's the last time I matched with anyone who felt like they knew me before we even met. And maybe that's the worst part. Knowing someone out there can hack their way into your life, pretending to be someone real, while you're left wondering what parts of yourself are really yours anymore. I matched with this woman on Tinder, looked perfect at first. Her photos were cool but natural, like she wasn't trying too hard. No overly staged shots or filters that screamed, "Look at me." Just simple moments, a candid laugh, a stroll through a park, a cozy coffee shop scene. Her bio had that casual, interesting vibe you don't see every day. It wasn't the usual generic stuff either. She mentioned her love for old books, spontaneous road trips, and an obsession with obscure jazz records. It felt authentic. We started chatting, and honestly, it felt different. Like maybe this could be something real. She was quick to reply, but never overwhelming, shared stories about her life without oversharing, and asked questions that made me think. There was a spark, a connection that felt rare in the swipe left culture. It was refreshing. But then weird stuff started happening. At first, it was little things. I'd check her profile between messages just to see if she updated something or added a new pic, and every time I looked, her photos and bio would be slightly different. Not huge changes, more like subtle tweaks. One picture would switch from a city skyline to a quiet street lined with autumn leaves. Another time, a snapshot of her at a cafe was replaced with one of her sitting on a park bench reading. Even her bio text changed. One day, she mentioned loving dogs. The next, she was talking about a favorite book I didn't remember seeing before. It was like someone was quietly editing it behind the scenes, rewriting the story of who she was for anyone who looked. I figured maybe she was just indecisive or testing how she wanted to present herself. Maybe she was experimenting with what kind of version of herself got more matches or conversations going. Whatever it was, I didn't think much of it, but the feeling stuck in the back of my mind like a tiny itch I couldn't scratch. When I finally asked about it, just casually, nothing too intense, she brushed it off. Said something like she just liked switching things up, keeping things fresh and spontaneous. That didn't really satisfy me, but I let it slide. Maybe it was just part of the weird little quirks of online dating, right? People are strange. People change. We set a date, and she sent me an address. It was in this neighborhood I didn't really know, kind of on the edge of town, where the streets are quiet, and the houses looked like no one had lived in them for a while. I didn't think much of it at first, just assumed it was one of those places where rent was cheap. Maybe she liked the quiet away from the noise and chaos. When I got there, the front door looked weird. Not in a sketchy way exactly, just off. The building was clearly a rental, that much was obvious. The door was one of those generic apartment doors you see everywhere. No decorations, no welcome mat, no personal touches. It wasn't what you'd expect from someone who seemed so alive and vibrant in their photos. I rang the bell, and she buzzed me in. Walking in, it was like stepping into an empty shell. The place was completely bare. No furniture, no decorations, no sound except the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. The walls were white, the floors cold and uninviting. It looked like a space someone just moved into, or maybe a model apartment staged for rent, but it felt lifeless. I didn't see her at first, which was weird, but then I spotted the camera. Mounted high up in the corner of the main room, pointed straight at the front door. That's what hit me. This wasn't her place. It was just a rental she was using to meet people, but more than that, it was a setup. She'd been watching me, watching everyone who came through that door probably. I wanted to leave right then, but I felt frozen, like the whole situation had my brain caught in a loop. I couldn't understand why she'd do this or how long she'd been doing it. How many other people had walked into that empty apartment, not knowing they were being recorded from the moment they stepped inside. She showed up after a few minutes, acting like everything was normal, like the empty place and the camera were no big deal. She smiled like she was welcoming me into her home, but it felt rehearsed fake. I tried to act like I was cool with it, but inside I was freaking out. The more I looked at that camera, the more I realized I had no idea who this woman really was. The profile edits, the empty place, the constant watching. It was like she wasn't just changing her story. She was rewriting it for every person she met. Maybe for one guy, she was the jazz lover. For another, the dog person. For someone else, the road trip junkie. Maybe the photos switched depending on who was looking, as if she was a living, breathing illusion tailored to what the other person wanted. The thought made my skin crawl. I didn't say much. I wasn't sure what to say. Who was I even talking to? Not the person in the photos, not the woman in front of me, but something else entirely. I left without really saying anything, the door clicking behind me like the last thing shutting on a bad joke. I never heard from her again. But every time I scroll through Tinder or see a new match, I get this sick feeling that someone's out there watching, waiting, editing their story. A chameleon hiding behind the screen, twisting themselves into whatever their next target wants, making you feel special, seen, understood. Until you walk into the empty apartment and realize it was all a performance. And the worst part, you're just part of the show. I matched with Ashley on Tinder, and honestly, things clicked way faster than I expected. She was funny, laid back, and had this vibe that made it feel like we'd known each other forever. Our conversations flowed naturally, jokes, shared interests, stories about our lives. After a couple of quick chats, she invited me over to her place one night. I thought, why not? The whole thing was moving fast, but in a good way, or so I thought. Her apartment was kind of small but super clean, almost too clean. Like someone had scrubbed every inch of it in a weird, obsessive way. The floors shone, the counters were spotless, and there wasn't a stray sock or a coffee mug out of place. Ashley joked about being a neat freak, but I just shrugged it off. Neatness is a good thing, right? We sat down on the couch, cracked open some beers, and everything felt chill. The kind of easy evening where you just relax and the world slows down. But then I noticed something. There was this other presence in the room, not physically in the same space as us, but definitely there. Ashley mentioned her roommate casually, like it was no big deal. He's mostly out of the way, she said. but I never saw him, didn't hear him, and Ashley barely mentioned him. I thought maybe he was out or just kept to himself. No big deal. The weird part was that the door to the room he supposedly occupied was always locked. Locked tight, no matter what time I came over. It was a small, windowless room at the end of the hallway. Dark, silent. I asked Ashley about it once, trying to keep it casual. She just laughed and said, "He's a bit of a hermit. Doesn't like visitors." That should have set off alarm bells, but I was too caught up in the moment, too drawn to Ashley's easy charm to think about it too much. Still, every time I came over, I got this uneasy feeling, like someone was watching us from behind that locked door. As the night went on, the tension grew. I kept catching glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, shadows shifting behind the curtains, a flicker of something in the hallway. I joked with Ashley, "Your roommate is kinda creepy, ha." But she just gave me this strange smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes, and quickly changed the subject. I didn't push it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Then, out of nowhere, Ashley got serious. Her usual easygoing demeanor vanished, replaced with something darker. "You should know," she said quietly, "my ex is still living here. He won't leave." I blinked. "What do you mean? I thought you moved out." "Nope," she said, voice low. "He's in that room. Just stays there mostly. Doesn't talk much anymore. Doesn't come out, but he knows everything about you." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "What do you mean?" "He's been watching, listening. Everything you say, every little thing you do around me, he knows it all." It hit me like a brick wall. The guy who was supposed to be invisible, the silent roommate, the locked room, the shadows, was watching me, knowing everything I said, everything I did. And he was still here. After that, I started noticing things, weird things. Sometimes when I texted Ashley, her replies would be strange, like she was answering questions I hadn't asked or commenting on details I never shared with her. It was subtle but unmistakable, like the information was coming from somewhere else, someone else. Other times, she'd mention things about me I never told her out loud, details that only someone watching closely could know. I started to wonder if the ex was feeding her information, or if she was sharing things to keep it close. One night, I was sitting on her couch and I heard it, a soft tapping coming from the locked room at the end of the hall, like fingers drumming on glass. I asked Ashley about it, my voice shaking slightly. She shrugged and said, "He's just there." Just there. Those two words echoed in my head like a warning, like a ghost that never left, always lurking, always watching. The more time I spent at her place, the more trapped I felt, like I was in a fishbowl, a display for someone who refused to leave. Someone who held this quiet, terrifying power over Ashley and everything she shared with me. I started skipping nights there, making excuses to avoid going over. Ashley seemed fine with it, almost too fine. But I knew he was still there. The silent, unseen roommate. The one who never spoke but somehow controlled everything. I never saw him, never heard his voice directly, but his presence was a heavy weight pressing down on every moment I was there. I felt like I was a puppet caught in some twisted performance where I was the audience and the act all at once. One night, I left without saying much. My heart was pounding in a way it never had before, rapid, uncontrollable, full of dread. I blocked Ashley on my phone, deleted the app, and tried to pretend none of it ever happened. But the feeling stuck. Like the roommate was still there, just on the other side of the city, knowing everything. My routines, my thoughts, my fears. Waiting. That's the last time I tried dating someone who shared a place with a silent stranger. It's not the kind of roommate you can just ignore, especially when they know too much. About you, about her, and about the spaces you thought were safe. Because sometimes the people you don't see are the ones you should be most afraid of. I was getting ready for this Tinder date, doing my makeup in the bathroom like I usually do. Just messing around with my eyeliner, trying to get it even for once. The bathroom was quiet except for the soft hum of the fan overhead and the occasional distant car passing by outside my window. I liked these little moments before heading out, the familiar routine helping to calm my nerves. The mirror was half fogged from the steam of my earlier shower, but I wiped it clean with the edge of a towel and leaned closer, trying to steady my hand as I drew a sharp wing on my eyelid. I glanced up into the mirror to check my progress, and that's when I saw it, a tall guy walking past the doorway behind me. Dark hair, kind of broad-shouldered, just a glimpse as he moved fast, My heart stopped for a second, like my chest had suddenly gone empty. I live alone. No roommates, no pets. No one supposed to be in my place right then. I blinked, convinced maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, or the shadow was just some weird lighting effect from the streetlight filtering through the window blinds. I turned my head slowly, trying not to panic, but the hallway was empty. Nothing. Just the dim light from the living room spilling down the corridor and the quiet hum of the city outside. No sign of anyone. I stood frozen for a moment, listening closely. No footsteps, no creaking floorboards, nothing. Just the familiar sounds of a city settling into the evening. Distant sirens, cars driving past, the faint chatter of neighbors somewhere down the block. I told myself I was overthinking it, maybe tired or stressed from the week. I'd been working late, and my mind had been running on overdrive. Maybe it was a trick of the light, a fleeting shadow caught in my peripheral vision. But the cold feeling crawling up my spine was stubborn, like something wasn't right. Trying to shake it off, I finished getting ready, throwing on my jacket and double-checking my bag for my wallet and phone. I locked the front door behind me and stepped out into the night, forcing myself to focus on the date ahead. His name was Mark. We matched a few days ago, and he seemed normal enough. Funny texts, a little quirky, nothing weird or off-putting. We exchanged a few messages about our favorite movies and local coffee shops, and he'd suggested meeting at this cozy bar downtown. When I arrived, Mark was already there, waiting with that easy smile that made me relax a little more than I expected. We started talking, and honestly, we clicked right away, laughing about dumb stuff, sharing stories, and just enjoying the easy vibe. I could feel the tension from earlier slowly melting away. But then, out of nowhere, Mark said something that froze me in place. He complimented my apartment. Specifically, he mentioned the hallway art, this weird collection of abstract paintings I have, the ones I picked up from a local artist market last year. They're a little eclectic, a little chaotic, but I love them. It's one of the few things that make my apartment feel like mine. I never told him where I live, not even the neighborhood. We'd only talk about the bar and some nearby places, but never anything personal like that. How could he know? I tried to play it cool, smiling and brushing it off like it was no big deal. Yeah, I like collecting local art, I said. He'd be my tome light. But inside, my brain was racing. I kept thinking about that guy I saw behind me in the mirror earlier. Could it be the same person? Was Mark the one who had been in my apartment? How? When? And why didn't I notice anything missing or out of place? Every time he glanced my way, I found myself studying him more closely. The way he moved, the way his eyes flicked to certain things, like he was cataloging everything. There was something just too knowing about him. The date carried on, but I couldn't stop watching him. Every laugh, every smile felt like it was layered with something else, something I couldn't quite name. It was impossible not to feel exposed, like my private space wasn't really private anymore. Mark talked about his job, some tech startup, and how he loved exploring hidden parts of the city. It was all normal stuff on the surface, but his familiarity with my apartment gnawed at me like a secret I couldn't forget. At one point, he casually mentioned a little cracked tile near the kitchen sink, how it looked like it needed fixing. I'd never told anyone about that tiny flaw. Not friends, not family, not even online. The way he described it made it clear he'd been inside. Panic started bubbling up. I wanted to ask him directly, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded and forced a laugh, telling myself maybe he'd seen pictures on social media or through a friend of a friend. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I don't post much about my place online. I keep it pretty private. After the date, I got home locking every door twice, pulling the curtains shut and turning on every light to flood the rooms with brightness. I paced from room to room, checking windows and closets, making sure nothing had been moved or stolen. But everything seemed fine. Still, I kept checking every room, every window, just making sure no one was watching. I even changed the locks the next day, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The cold, creeping dread that someone had been inside, someone who knew me better than I ever thought possible. Sometimes, late at night, when alone in my apartment, I swear I catch a shadow moving outside the window, or hear a faint noise that sounds like footsteps pacing just beyond the door. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I swear I see that same tall guy again, standing just out of sight behind me. I still wonder if that man in the mirror was Mark all along, the guy who somehow slipped into my life before I even met him, who already knew my space, my habits, my secrets. It's messed up, knowing someone knows more about you than you think, even before you give it away. The idea that someone can invade your life quietly, slipping through cracks you didn't know existed. Now, every time I get a new match or message on Tinder, my heart races a little faster because I'm always waiting for the next mark to come out of the shadows, someone who's been watching me, waiting for their moment. And that's the worst part, knowing the person who's closest might already be the one who's been inside it all along. So, this one time I went on 3 pretty solid dates with a guy named John. At first, everything felt chill. He was funny, seemed smart, and wasn't one of those let's rush everything types. He had that easy confidence that wasn't pushy but made you feel like you were actually interesting to him. Our conversations flowed naturally, and I liked that he wasn't all about showing off or trying too hard. By the third date, John invited me over to his apartment. Honestly, I was curious to see his space and maybe keep the vibe going. Plus, it felt like a step forward without being too much too soon. I wasn't expecting much when I got there. Just a place to hang out, maybe watch a movie or cook something together. But when I stepped inside, something about his place felt off. The apartment was way too clean and sterile, not in the cozy, lived-in way that makes you feel at home, but more like an Airbnb that's been wiped down for the next guest. The floors gleamed under the soft lighting, the furniture was modern but bland, arranged so perfectly it looked like a showroom. There were no personal touches anywhere. No photos on the walls, no bookshelves stuffed with novels or random clutter, no plants struggling for sunlight on the windowsill, just bare surfaces and neutral colors. I tried to shake it off and focus on the night, but I couldn't stop noticing how weird it was that his place didn't feel lived in. It was almost too perfect, like the space was staged, waiting for something or someone. I figured maybe he was just super neat, or maybe it was a new apartment he hadn't settled into yet. I didn't say anything about it, not wanting to make a big deal out of something that could just be a personality quirk. Later in the evening, when I excused myself to use the bathroom, I did that thing where you open drawers out of habit, looking for a tissue or just something to keep your hands busy. It's weird how your mind does that, trying to anchor itself in a new place by touching the familiar. The first drawer I pulled out was empty, but the second one caught me off guard. There, right in plain sight, was a driver's license. But it wasn't his. It was a woman's. The name on it didn't ring any bells, and the photo showed this normal-looking woman. Nothing too fancy or striking, but definitely not John. The license looked genuine enough, but why was it just sitting there, not tucked away or hidden? I blinked and looked closer, and right next to it was an engagement ring, the kind with a big flashy stone that catches the light even in dim rooms. It wasn't shoved in there or hidden away. It was just sitting there like it was waiting for someone to find it. My heart started pounding, and 1,000 questions ran through my mind. Who was this woman? Why was her ID in John's drawer? And what the hell was an engagement ring doing right next to it? I tried to calm myself, thinking maybe it was something innocent, like his sister's stuff, or maybe he was holding onto these things for someone else. When I got back to the living room, I brought it up, trying to sound casual. I asked about the license and the ring, expecting some kind of explanation. Maybe a family story or something innocent enough to make me stop worrying. But John just laughed like he thought it was a joke, or maybe like he was trying to make light of it. He said it was just left there, which felt weirdly vague, like he wasn't really denying anything but also wasn't willing to tell me the truth. And then something about his face changed. It wasn't just a shift in expression. It was like a whole new version of him flicked on, right there in front of me. His smile got sharper, almost cold, and his eyes darkened like he'd been waiting for me to find that drawer all along. Like this was some twisted test or game he was running, and I just tripped over the hidden clue. The easygoing guy I thought I'd been seen was gone, replaced by someone who felt dangerous in a quiet, chilling way. The kind of person who keeps secrets and watches how others react when those secrets start to slip. I wanted to leave right then, but I didn't. Part of me was frozen, trying to figure out if I was just overreacting. The rest of the night, he was different, more intense, watching me like I'd crossed a line I wasn't supposed to. Our conversation became sharper, more guarded, and that night, the apartment felt colder, more like a trap than a home. After I left, I couldn't shake the image of that driver's license and the ring sitting there, innocently visible but heavy with meaning. Why keep something like that out in the open but act like it didn't matter? The whole thing felt like a puzzle piece shoved under the rug, daring me to pull it out. I did a little digging on the name from the license, hoping it would lead to some normal explanation. But instead, I found a few local news stories about a woman missing, Someone who vanished without a trace a few months back. Same name, same city. It sent a chill straight through me. Suddenly, the sterile apartment, the hidden reminders, and John's strange reaction took on a whole new, darker meaning. I don't know if John had anything to do with her disappearance or if he was just connected to her in some way I couldn't understand. But the thought of someone keeping these pieces of a vanished life right there in a neat drawer, like trophies or warnings, freaked me out more than I ever expected. That's when I deleted my Tinder profile, blocked him everywhere, and never looked back. I told a few close friends what happened, but I didn't want to make a huge deal out of it. Sometimes you just want to pretend it never happened, bury it deep where it can't haunt you. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that night and wonder what would have happened if I hadn't opened that drawer, or if I had stayed a little longer. It's like stepping into a story you wish you could unread, one where the happy beginning suddenly turns into a cold, unreadable ending. So yeah, Tinder can be fun, until you realize some profiles are more like traps dressed up in smiles and good conversation. And sometimes, the scariest things aren't ghosts or monsters. They're people hiding pieces of someone else's life in plain sight, right in their drawers, just waiting to be found. You ever had one of those nights where you think, maybe crashing at this person's place after a few drinks is no big deal, and then realize way too late it was a massive mistake? Yeah, that was me with Tina. We met on Tinder, and honestly, we clicked pretty fast. She was funny, sharp, and had this kind of edge that made you want to hang around. The kind of person who seems like she's got stories, but only tells you the ones she wants. After a couple of drinks at a bar downtown, she invited me over to her apartment. I figured why not? It wasn't late, and it seemed chill enough. I thought maybe we'd keep the vibe going, maybe watch a movie or just talk some more. What I didn't expect was to end up stuck somewhere I couldn't get out of. Her apartment was in one of those old downtown buildings, the kind with creaky wooden floors and narrow hallways that smell like a mix of incense, damp stone, and something metallic like rust or blood. It wasn't the kind of place you pick on purpose, but Tina said it was vintage charm. The second I stepped inside, the smell hit me, but I shrugged it off. The walls were cluttered with all kinds of weird art. Half of it looked like it belonged in a thrift store. The other half was straight up unsettling. There were paintings with twisted faces, sculptures that looked like broken dolls, and random masks hung over doorways. But Tina was a vibe, and we kept talking, laughing, and just chilling, so I ignored the weirdness around me. I didn't mean to fall asleep, but I did. The drinks, the day, the buzz of the city outside, whatever it was, I was out cold before I knew it. Then around 2 a.m., I woke up because I heard Tina talking. Her voice was low, urgent, almost like she was whispering a secret. At first, I thought she was on the phone, but when I strained to listen, the voice she was answering to sounded off. It wasn't human. It was robotic, distorted, like someone messing with their voice or a glitchy recording playing on repeat. It sent this cold feeling crawling up my spine. Curious but trying not to freak out, I crept out of the bedroom and toward the living room. Tina was there, sitting on the couch, leaning toward the TV. Only the screen was black, completely off, like it hadn't been on in weeks. She was whispering, not into a phone or to herself, but directly at the screen, like she was expecting something or someone to respond. Her lips moved fast, almost frantic, and her eyes were locked on that blank screen like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I stood there, frozen for a second, wondering if I was dreaming or if this was some kind of creepy prank. But it was real. The room was dead silent except for her whispering and the occasional static hiss that seemed to come from the TV itself, even though it was off. I wanted to leave, like now. I backed away slowly toward the hallway, planning to grab my stuff and make a quiet exit. Then I realized something terrible. My keys were gone. Not in my jacket, not in my bag, nowhere. I figured maybe I left them in the kitchen or on the counter, so I checked, but no luck. I tried the door. Locked. Not just locked. Triple locked. Deadbolt, chain, and some kind of sly latch that looked like it belonged on a jail cell from the outside. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Tina was still whispering, but now she was standing up, eyes glued to the black screen like she didn't even notice me pacing in a panic. "Hey," I called out, my voice shaking. "Can you let me out, please?" No reaction. It was like I wasn't even there. I ran to the window, hoping maybe I could climb out or at least get some help, but the thing wouldn't budge. Heavy bars on the outside, and I remembered the building was one of those old places where windows only open a few inches for safety. Basically, I was trapped. I started searching the apartment for anything I could use to break the door open, but the place was bare. No tools, no heavy objects, just weird paintings and incense burners scattered everywhere. I thought about smashing the TV. Maybe it was the key to whatever was happening here. But before I could even reach it, Tina turned toward me, and for the first time she blinked. Her face wasn't hers anymore. It was pale, almost translucent, with deep shadows under her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. The warmth and humor I'd seen in her before were gone. Her voice, when she finally spoke, wasn't human either. It was that same glitchy, distorted sound from before, but layered with something colder, sharper, like it wasn't Tina at all. I took a step back, but I was trapped in the hallway with nowhere to go. I don't remember how long I was there, minutes, hours, maybe days. Time lost all meaning. Tina, or whatever she was, kept whispering at the screen, sometimes smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes, sometimes looking straight through me like I was nothing. The room grew colder, the air thick with an electric tension like something was about to snap. At one point, I thought I heard footsteps outside the apartment. Voices. I shouted as loud as I could, banging on the door, begging for help. The locks clicked, the door swung open, and I bolted out of there without looking back. I never went back to her place. I never answered her messages again. The last I heard, she moved out, and the apartment was empty again, waiting for the next unsuspecting visitor. No one believed me when I told them what happened. They said I was imagining things or drunk out of my mind. But I didn't know what I heard, what I saw. That black screen wasn't just a TV. It was something else. And Tina. She wasn't Tina anymore. So yeah, next time someone invites you over after a couple of drinks, maybe think twice. Because some doors, once locked, don't open the way you expect. You think you know what a normal date feels like until it doesn't. Like when you meet a guy named Daniel on Tinder, and the plan is just to cruise around town for a bit. Nothing fancy, just a casual drive with some music. Maybe grab a snack, then call it a night. You figure it's chill, just a simple evening, nothing more. But things got weird fast, like way faster than I ever imagined. I remember when he pulled up to my place, an old, beaten-up sedan that looked like it barely survived the 90s, but was clean enough that I didn't question it. Daniel was easy to talk to, nothing sketchy at first glance. Just the usual first date small talk, jokes, the kind of awkward laughs you get when you're trying to figure out if you actually like someone or if it's all just polite pretense. It wasn't super romantic or exciting, just normal, or at least it seemed that way. We started driving around, windows down a little because it was one of those perfect early summer nights. Warm but breezy, the city lights blurring past like stars twinkling in the dark. I was feeling okay. Not thrilled, but not bored either. The kind of this could be fine feeling you get when you're not in a rush to impress or be impressed. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel said he needed to stop for gas. Cool, whatever. I didn't think much of it. Pulling up to the gas station, I started stretching and getting ready to step out, but then I heard it. A loud, heavy thumping coming from the trunk. Not just a little bump or the car settling, but a steady, hard thudding, like something or someone was hitting the inside of that trunk over and over again. I froze instantly, trying to convince myself it was just something loose, a box shifting, maybe a spare tire rolling around. But the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. Daniel didn't say anything about it. He got out, and I followed, trying to act like I didn't hear a thing. I glanced over at him, but he was just pumping gas, casual as hell, like nothing was wrong. The thumping kept going for a minute or two, then suddenly stopped, as if someone had been told to shut up. The silence felt worse somehow, like the sound had been hiding something worse beneath it. I didn't say a word, just told myself it was nothing. Probably some weird gas station noise, or the car's trunk mechanism acting up. But my stomach twisted into knots I couldn't shake. I kept glancing back at the trunk, half expecting something to jump out or at least a shadow to move. When we got back into the car, I tried to keep the vibe light, but my heart was racing. The quiet thumping echoed in my head. Then I suddenly remembered I'd left something at home, so I told Daniel to just drop me off. I didn't want to be out with him any longer than I already was. He didn't seem to care much, just nodded and turned the car around. Once I got home, I locked every door and window, not even wanting to think about the weird thumping or how he called me by a name that wasn't mine. Something I didn't catch right away, but stuck in the back of my mind like a bad itch. It wasn't my name exactly. It was close, but wrong, like he'd almost said someone else's name instead. I shoved that feeling aside. telling myself I was imagining things, but the unease lingered. Later that night, my curiosity and fear got the best of me. I pulled out my phone and typed in his full name, Daniel, his last name, which I'd asked for earlier just to be polite. Except nothing came up. No social media profiles, no LinkedIn, no Facebook, no traces of him anywhere online. Usually that's a red flag, but I told myself maybe he was just private or maybe he had reasons to keep a low profile. Still, it bugged me, so I started digging deeper. That's when I found something that sent chills down my spine. 2 women had gone missing in my city within the last month. Both were young, both vanished without a trace. One of their names was eerily familiar. The exact name Daniel had accidentally called me on the drive back, like it slipped out before he caught himself. I read the reports over and over, looking for any clue, any connection. My mind was spinning. Could it be the same person? Was Daniel using a fake identity? Were those women trapped somewhere, maybe even in that trunk? I didn't know what to believe. My hands shook as I scrolled through news articles, police reports, community forums filled with worried messages from people searching for answers. Some folks talked about seeing a weird older set and cruising around late at night, but no one knew who was inside. It was like the car was a ghost. I tried calling the police, telling them about the thumping and the name mix-up, but they said without more solid evidence, there wasn't much they could do. I felt stuck like I was screaming into a void. They told me to be careful and report anything suspicious, but there was no immediate help. Days went by, and every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. I kept expecting a message from Daniel, but nothing came. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I just barely escaped something terrible. That night, and many nights after, I lay awake replaying the sounds of that thumping and Daniel's strange behavior. Every shadow outside felt like it was watching me. I changed my routine, took different routes to work, stopped going out alone at night. And then, one night, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one word, remember. I deleted it right away, but it stuck with me. Who was sending these? Was Daniel still out there somewhere? Or was it someone else trying to mess with me? I blocked the number, but the fear stayed. I still don't know what happened exactly, what that trunk really held. All I know is that what started as a normal Tinder date turned into the kind of nightmare you don't want to admit is real. Sometimes when I hear a car door slam or a trunk pop open, I freeze, hoping it's not him. Because maybe, just maybe, the worst part isn't what you see or hear, it's what you don't. I never thought a Tinder date would turn into something straight out of a horror flick, but here I am, stuck in this weird loop I still can't explain. It all started with Laura, funny, sarcastic, and oddly obsessed with this very specific kind of horror movie that I'd never heard anyone talk about before. Like she was quoting lines and referencing scenes from these old, barely known flicks that made zero sense to me. But somehow it was cool. Made her stand out, you know. Our date was great. We met at this tiny bar that felt like it had been there forever, with sticky floors and weird neon signs buzzing overhead. Laura was cool, easy to talk to, and yeah, a little strange in a way that was actually charming. We joked, talked about dumb horror movie stuff, and just vibed for hours. By the end of it, I was pretty sure I wanted to see her again. It wasn't often you meet someone who's not just playing the Tinder game, but actually seems real. Then days later, my phone buzzes with a message from her. Just one line, asking why I ghosted her. That threw me off because I thought I was the one who was gonna text first, maybe ask her out again. So I explained I hadn't ghosted, that I thought we had a good time and was waiting for her to say something. Then she told me she never met me. What? I stared at my phone like I'd gone crazy. I asked her again. She insisted she didn't know who I was, had never been on a date with me, and had no idea what I was talking about. I pulled up the photos from that night, the selfies we took together, the blurry shots of us laughing, that goofy shot of her holding up this terrible horror movie poster. But then my phone started acting up, like really glitching hard. The images started disappearing one by one, pixelating, then vanishing completely. I refreshed, restarted the phone, even tried using my laptop, but the photos were gone everywhere. Not just off my phone, completely wiped. I was freaked out, but I figured maybe it was some weird bug. Then, just to clear my head, I went out for a walk. That's when I saw her. Laura. But this time she wasn't alone. She was with another guide, sitting outside this small cafe I'd never been to before. The scene looked exactly like my date. The same kind of laughter, The same jokes she had told me, even the same exact way she rolled her eyes when the guy said something dumb. I tried to focus on the guy, thinking maybe it was a friend or brother or something. But he looked confused, a little lost, like he didn't know what was going on either. She kept bringing up the same horror movies, same weird lines, the same sarcasm. I watched for a few minutes, heart pounding because it felt like I was trapped in some alternate reality. Then I walked away, feeling like I was losing my mind. Back at home, I tried to find anything online about her. No social media, no public profiles, nothing that matched the pictures she'd shown me. I even searched the weird horror movie she liked, the one she was obsessed with, but nothing tied to anyone named Laura. Days passed. She messaged me again, more demanding this time, saying I was ignoring her and that I owed her an explanation. I didn't reply. Instead, I scoured the internet for anything that could explain what was happening. That's when I stumbled on some crazy theory on a forum about a woman who used Tinder to lure people out, but was actually some kind of ghost or spirit feeding off their attention. Of course, I rolled my eyes and laughed it off, but I was desperate. Then the weird stuff started happening with my phone again. At random moments, it would open the camera app on its own, or start playing snippets of static with faint laughter in the background. Once, while scrolling, I swore I saw her face flash on the screen for a split second, but whenever I paused or tried to screenshot, nothing was there. I started avoiding going out worried she'd be there, pretending to be someone else doing the same thing again. I was stuck in this loop where I couldn't tell if I'd actually gone on that date or if I just imagined it all. One night, I dreamt she was sitting right across from me, smiling that same sarcastic smile. She told me the movies she loved were never meant to be watched. They were like keys. Keys to open doors between real and fake, or past and present, or something I couldn't quite understand. Then I woke up, and my phone was in my hand with a message from her. It said simply, "Don't forget me." That was the moment I stopped trying to figure it out. Laura's out there somewhere, doing the same thing. Dating someone else, making the same jokes, quoting the same movies, erasing the proof, and leaving people wondering if it ever really happened. And me, I'm stuck trying to convince myself it wasn't real, but deep down I know it was. Or maybe it still is. Either way, I'm done chasing shadows. I matched with Eric on Tinder, and honestly, at first, he seemed pretty normal. Like, maybe even boring normal, which was kind of refreshing. He was cute in a low-key way, clean-cut, nothing flashy. We chatted for a few days and everything felt chill. No weird questions, no pressure, just simple plans to meet up. Our first date was at this little coffee shop that felt like it was stuck in the 90s. Eric was funny in a quiet way and we clicked. It was the kind of vibe where you're comfortable just sitting there, not rushing to fill the silence. He didn't try to impress or be anything he wasn't. I left thinking, okay, maybe this could be something. Then came the second date. I suggested we check out this dive bar I liked, something casual and easy. But the minute I saw Eric that night, something felt off. I can't really explain it. Not like he looked different or anything, but the energy was colder. Less warmth in his smile. He seemed distant, almost tense. As the night went on, he started saying stuff that didn't add up. He'd bring up things I never told him, random details about my life that we never talked about, like stuff I hadn't shared with anyone. It was creeping me out, but I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I just mentioned it once and forgot. But then he got aggressive, not physically, but the way he talked, sharp, biting. It wasn't playful like the first date. It was like a switch flipped and I was dealing with a completely different person. He said stuff that felt like veiled threats, like he was trying to test me or see how far I'd let it go. I wanted to leave, but the bar was crowded and I didn't want to cause a scene. After that night, I stopped replying to his messages. I told myself I'd block him, but I wanted to figure out what the hell was going on first. That's when I started digging. I Googled his name and found a news article buried in the archives about an Eric who had a twin brother. The twin, also named Eric, well, same last name at least, had escaped from a psychiatric facility a few weeks before our date. The article described the brother as dangerous, unstable, and under strict supervision before he vanished. I froze. I reread it, hoping it was some kind of mistake, but it wasn't. There were even photos of the twins together. They looked identical, but the one in the hospital photo had this wild, haunted look in his eyes, the kind of look you don't want to see in a person. That's when everything clicked. The Eric I went out with on the second date. I didn't know if it was the calm, normal guy I met the first time or his escaped twin brother who was on the loose. I tried to compare the two in my memory, the way he moved, how he talked, the energy, but it was hard to tell. I didn't get a chance to see him well enough the first time to compare, and now I was left second guessing every moment. I went back to check his social media, or what was supposed to be his social media. The profiles were weirdly empty or deleted. No photos, no posts, no friends. It was like someone wiped him clean off the internet. I felt like I was caught in some kind of bad thriller. Then I noticed something else. There were no texts from him after I stopped replying. No angry messages, no attempts to contact me again. Which was strange because the Eric from the first date seemed like the kind of guy who'd at least want to argue or get defensive. It made me think the one I saw a second time might not even have been him. Maybe it was the twin trying to mess with me. Or worse, maybe the first one was the twin and the second date was a normal Eric trying to fix it. I couldn't trust anything. I started checking my apartment obsessively, locking doors and windows multiple times, even though nothing happened. Just that feeling that I didn't know who I was dealing with. Days later, I passed by a convenience store and saw a flyer stuck on the window. It was for the escaped twin, Eric, last seen wearing a dark jacket, described as dangerous but not necessarily violent unless provoked. I stared at that photo. The guy looked almost like the Eric I'd met on the second date. Same smile, same haircut, same eyes that held some kind of storm. I threw the flyer away and I kept thinking, what if the guy I met was trying to get close to me to stay hidden? Or what if the twin wanted me to find out to scare me? I don't know if Eric ever told anyone about his brother or if he was hiding something else. I deleted Tinder after that, made a bunch of excuses to friends about why I was stepping back from dating for a while. Sometimes late at night, I catch myself wondering which Eric I was actually with. The one who wanted to get to know me, or the one who was running from something darker, trying to use me as cover. The whole thing left this weird chill that won't go away, like the story isn't finished yet, and I'm stuck in the middle of it, waiting to see what happens next. So, yeah, I matched with Eric, thought I was meeting a normal guy, and ended up in this mess where I don't even know who he was. That's the kind of story you don't really tell at parties. But hey, here it is. I matched with Vina on Tinder. Her profile caught my eye right away. Smart, confident, sexy without trying too hard. You know the type who just owns every picture they post, like she's completely comfortable in her skin and knows exactly what she wants. The kind of girl that makes you think, yeah, I'd want to meet her. We started chatting, and it was easy. Funny without trying, and she didn't ask the usual boring questions. We set up a date pretty quickly. Not the usual back and forth small talk, just a straight let's meet. I was already curious, maybe a little too curious. When I met her, she was exactly like her photos. Sharp black jeans, leather jacket, hair pulled back but messy in a cool way. She smiled like she knew secrets and I wanted to hear them all. She was witty, confident, and talked like she was from somewhere else, not just the city where we met. There was this vibe, like she was holding something back, but not in a mysterious, I'm so deep way. More like she had stories I wasn't supposed to know yet. The date was chill at first. We went to this art gallery with weird sculptures and paintings I didn't understand. Vina seemed obsessed with some pieces, especially the ones that looked broken or unfinished. She kept staring at them, mumbling about people who left things behind or places they never returned to. It felt kind of poetic, but also weirdly personal, like she was talking about herself but trying not to. Later, at a tiny cafe that smelled like old books and burnt espresso, Vina started slipping up. She mentioned people I'd never heard of, friends from back home or old flames, but none of them made sense with the life she described earlier. She talked about places she'd been that I knew for a fact she never mentioned before. One time, she named a town halfway across the country, with a sad story about a lost sibling I never saw her connect to anything else. It wasn't like she was lying exactly, more like the piece didn't fit right, like someone reading a script and messing up the lines. I brushed it off the first couple times, thinking maybe she was just eccentric or complicated. People are weird, right? The chemistry was real low, so I kept seeing her. After a few dates, I noticed she never let me take photos of her, or if I tried, she'd duck out of the frame like a ghost. No social media friends in common, no tagged photos anywhere. I started getting a little paranoid, so I took screenshots of her profile just in case. Then things got weirder. One morning out of nowhere, I got a message on Tinder from Vina again, except the name was different. Same photos, but the name was Maya. I thought maybe she changed her name, maybe a privacy thing. But the vibe was off. The profile was newer, less polished, like a copycat. Curious and a little freaked out, I did a reverse image search on the photos. That's when everything spiraled. The pictures belonged to a missing person. Maya, or the girl in the photos, had been reported missing over a year ago. The news articles talked about how she vanished without a trace, no leads, no suspects. The same photos Vina used in her profile were on every missing person's site I found. Same hair, same smile, same eyes. I sat there for a long time, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was a mistake. Maybe some sick coincidence, but the photos were identical. It couldn't be. I went back through our conversations, trying to pick up clues I missed before. The random mentions of people I didn't know, the odd stories about places that didn't fit. Maybe they weren't mistakes after all. Maybe Vina was pretending to be someone else entirely. And the messages started flooding in again. New ones from the Maya profile. At first, it was random questions, weird little observations about things I never told anyone. How I like my coffee, my favorite color, stuff that made me feel watched. Then the messages got darker, more urgent. Talk about waiting, coming back. And you have to see it to believe it. I stopped replying, blocked the profile, deleted the app. But the messages kept coming, slipping through some glitch, showing up on my phone like a ghost tapping on my screen. One night, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Dozens of texts from an unknown number. When I looked, it was just the same photo Vina/Maya used over and over. No words. Just the picture staring back at me. I started checking my apartment more. Doors locked, windows closed, but there was this feeling I wasn't alone. Like something was watching me just out of sight. My phone battery drained faster than usual. Apps opened and closed by themselves. Sometimes when I'd pass a mirror, I thought I caught a glimpse of someone standing behind me, but when I spun around, nothing was there. I don't know who I actually went out with that night. Was it Vina? Was it Maya? Someone using someone else's face to get close. Whatever it was, it's still here, sending messages, waiting for me to answer. I deleted every trace of the app, changed my number, and tried to forget. But the photos keep showing up on my lock screen. Sometimes my phone just lights up in the middle of the night with her face staring at me. I don't want to know who she really is, and honestly, I'm scared she doesn't want me to forget. I don't usually do the whole meet a random person off Tinder and take them home thing. It's just not my style. But Jeremy was different. From the moment I saw his profile, there was something about his smile that felt genuine, I guess. Not forced like most pics on those apps. When we matched, the conversation flowed so easy it almost felt like talking to an old friend. So yeah, when he asked to meet up, I said yes. We chose this little jazz bar in my neighborhood. Dim, cozy, and with live music on Thursdays. Perfect low-key vibe. When I got there, Jeremy was already there, sitting at the bar with that same easy smile from his photos. He looked warmer in person, like someone you could actually trust. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. The music, the weird jobs we'd had, our favorite movies. The kind of conversation that doesn't feel like a first date. There was this electric chemistry between us, like we'd known each other forever, but just hadn't met yet. Eventually, the bar started clearing out, and Jeremy asked if I wanted to come back to my place. I didn't hesitate. Something about him made me want to say yes. That night felt like a blur. Warm, safe, and just easy. No weirdness. No red flags. Just him and me like we'd done this 100 times before. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. Jeremy was gone. I figured he must have left early. No big deal. But when I tried to text him later, the messages wouldn't deliver. At first, I thought maybe his phone was dead or he was busy. But then I checked Tinder. His profile was gone. Completely deleted. I tried searching for him on every social media I could think of. Nothing. No Instagram, no Facebook, no LinkedIn. It was like Jeremy never existed online outside that one profile. Feeling weird, I decided to go back to the jazz bar to ask the staff if they remembered him. Maybe they could help. Maybe he worked there or was a regular. When I got there, the place was empty, and the bartender looked confused when I mentioned Jeremy. She insisted no one by that name had been there recently. Not a customer, not a regular. She checked the reservation list and the guest book. No Jeremy. I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures from the night before. She stared at them and shook her head. I asked to see the receipt. I had one for my drinks, but not for his. I double-checked my card statement. There was no charge for anyone else that night, only mine. I was the only one who paid. That's when the panic started creeping in. I tried calling Jeremy's number again. No answer. No voicemail. Just the messages failing to send. I even tried to block him and unblock him, hoping it'd fix the glitch. It didn't. Then the weirdest thing happened. My phone started playing audio clips by itself. At first, it was just background noise, the faint sound of a jazz saxophone or muffled chatter, like recordings from that bar. I thought maybe it was some app glitch where I accidentally opened a voice memo. But then the voice came. Soft, whispering my name. Not once, not twice. It happened again and again, usually late at night when I was about to fall asleep. It sounded like Jeremy's voice, close and urgent, saying my name in this slow, drawn-out way that made my skin crawl. I tried deleting any recent downloads, clearing my cache, even resetting my phone. Nothing stopped it. The whispers kept coming back. I started noticing other small things too. Like my apartment door would be unlocked when I was sure I locked it. Sometimes I'd find objects moved. A book shifted, a chair slightly out of place. Nothing major, but enough to make me jumpy. One night, I woke up to my phone buzzing on its own. The screen was cracked. I hadn't dropped it. And the audio was louder, clearer. Jeremy's voice whispering again, but this time closer, like he was right next to me. I couldn't take it anymore. I called the bar again during the day. The manager answered this time. When I asked about Jeremy, he said the bar had no record of anyone named Jeremy showing up in months. He even checked the cameras for me. No sign of Jeremy or me meeting there. I told him about the receipts and the whispers on my phone. He said maybe I was mixed up. Maybe it was some kind of prank or a scam. But even he sounded uncomfortable. I tried to tell my friends. They'd all said maybe I was stressed or imagining things. Maybe the drinks got to me. But I knew what I felt was real. I went to the police, but they said without any proof. No receipts, no camera footage, no witnesses. There was nothing to investigate. I'm stuck in this weird limbo now. Jeremy disappeared like a ghost, but he left behind this mess. The deleted profile, the missing drinks, the strange whispers on my phone. I've changed my number twice since then, but the whispers keep finding me. Sometimes, late at night when the room is quiet, I swear I hear my name being called softly from the other side of the phone. I don't know who Jeremy really is or what he wanted, but I do know I don't want to find out. I don't usually go on Tinder dates unless I've talked to the person for a while, but this one just felt easy. Her name was Lisa. Pretty smile, simple photos, nothing too try-hard. We messaged for maybe 3 days, mostly just dumb banter and basic get-to-know-you stuff. And then she asked if I wanted to grab a drink that week. It was a Wednesday and I was bored enough to say yes. She picked the place, this dive bar off a side street that I hadn't been to in a while. It wasn't sketchy or anything, just kind of forgotten. Dim lights, weird smell, old arcade machines no one touched. The kind of spot you go to when you don't want to see anyone you know. I got there first, grabbed a drink, and waited. She came in about 10 minutes later wearing a big coat and looking around like she wasn't sure she recognized me. I waved. She smiled, kind of, and sat down across from me. The vibe was off pretty much right away. She looked like her photos mostly, but something felt different. Not physically, just energy-wise. She seemed distracted. Not nervous distracted, just split. She kept checking her phone. Every 2 minutes, sometimes less, like she was waiting for something or someone. Her eyes would flick to the door, then back down to the screen over and over. I asked if everything was okay, and she nodded without really looking at me. At that point, I should have just finished my drink and dipped, but I told myself maybe she was having a bad day. I tried to steer the conversation into safer ground, music, food, whatever. She barely responded, just kept half smiling and nodding like she wasn't actually listening. After about 20 minutes, 2 guys walked in. They came straight to our table like they already knew where she'd be. No hesitation. One of them pulled up a chair without asking. The other stayed standing but leaned over close. Lisa didn't seem surprised. She didn't introduce them either. She just smiled a little wider for the first time all night and looked between them and me. The guy who sat down, tall, hoodie, tattoos up his hand, started asking me casual questions. Friendlied off, like too smooth. He didn't ask how we knew each other. He didn't seem interested in the date part at all. He just jumped into stuff like where I lived, if I liked the area, if I drove here. I answered vaguely, mostly just to keep the mood from getting weird. But the longer they stayed, the more boxed in I felt, like the space around the table had shrunk. The second guy, the one still standing, was staring me down hard. He barely blinked. He just stood there, eyes fixed, like he was trying to figure something out about me. He kept glancing at my phone when I pulled it out. I put it face down on the table after that. Then they suggested moving spots. They said there was a bar nearby that was better, more quiet, more our vibe. I looked at Lisa and she finally spoke, saying it'd be fun, that I should come. My whole body was telling me not to. There was this pressure behind the suggestion, like it wasn't a suggestion at all. The guy with the tattoos had already stood up and was motioning for me to follow, like it was a done deal. The other guy was already halfway to the door. Lisa stayed seated, looking at me like she was waiting to see what I'd do. No expression. Just watching. I said I needed to use the bathroom first. The guy shrugged, said they'd wait outside. They all left together. I watched them go. Then I walked out the back door. There's this narrow little alley behind that bar that leads to the main road. I slipped through it fast, didn't look back. Heart pounding, barely breathing, phone in my hand, ready to call someone. I didn't stop until I was 2 blocks away in a lit-up gas station, pretending to browse snacks while I caught my breath. I sat in my car for a while after that, just sitting in silence, trying to make sense of it. I kept thinking, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe they were just weird friends and I bailed for no reason. But I couldn't stop replaying the way she kept checking her phone. How they showed up without warning. The way they zeroed in on me like I was a target. Like they already knew stuff about me, maybe more than I thought. I went back to the app the next day. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Just gone. Like she deleted it. I tried reverse searching the pictures. Nothing came up. It looked real, not AI fake or anything. But I couldn't find them anywhere else online. No Instagram, no Facebook, nothing. Later that week, I found a thread online about Tinder setups, people luring others out for robberies or worse. Most of the stories were in big cities. Mine didn't really make headlines, but it fit. The distracted girl, the sudden friends, the move to a second location. I'd seen enough of those true crime episodes to know that second location is where bad things happen. I started carrying pepper spray after that. I don't even care if it's overkill. I also started sharing my location with a few close friends whenever I go out. I still use Tinder sometimes, but I've definitely changed how I move. I meet in busy spots. I'd never let someone else pick the place. I never stay long if the energy's off. I don't know what would have happened if I'd followed them that night. Probably nothing good. Best case, I get robbed. Worst case, yeah. So, yeah, that's my story. I matched with Lisa. We met for drinks, and I left through the back door before it turned into something worse. Okay, so I don't really know how to explain this without sounding like I've totally lost it, but whatever, here goes. This happened a few months ago, right after I moved into this new apartment. I was on Tinder a lot back then, kind of just swiping out of boredom. I wasn't even trying to date seriously. I just liked having someone to talk to when I was eating cereal at midnight or whatever. So one night I matched with this guy named Sam. He looked totally normal, like actually normal. Not the usual shirtless mirror selfies or fake profiles. He had this slightly awkward smile, and his bio just said something dumb like introvert who likes tea. He didn't seem try hard. He messaged first, and his texts were a little stiff but sweet. I kind of liked that. It felt real, like he didn't have a bunch of practice lines. We talked for a few days. Nothing deep, just dumb stuff like how much we both hated group chats or how bad the weather had been lately. Eventually, we decided to meet for a drink. I picked a chill little bar near where I live. It's the kind of place with dim lights and mismatched chairs and a jukebox that always plays the wrong song. I got there early, ordered a cider, and waited. He showed up a few minutes later. I recognized him right away. Same brown jacket, same floppy hair. He looked even more awkward in person, fidgeting with his sleeves and sort of half-smiling whenever I talked, but I found it kind of charming. He listened a lot, asked thoughtful questions, but didn't overshare. Honestly, it was one of the least weird dates I've had in a while. We stayed for maybe an hour and a half, just talked. Nothing dramatic. I took a few selfies with him during the night. I don't even know why. I never really do that on first dates, but I wanted to send them to my friend as proof that I was out with an actual human. She's always saying I bail on plans too much. So I snapped a couple with him while we were sitting there, one outside when we left. He kind of laughed and said something like, I don't usually show up in photos, but I thought you was just being awkward again. Anyway, we said bye out front. I walked home feeling weirdly good. Like it wasn't fireworks or anything, but he seemed genuinely kind. Just soft-spoken and easy to be around. Different from the usual loud, performative Tinder types. That night, I opened my camera roll to look at the photos. I was gonna send one to my friend with some sarcastic caption, but when I opened them, he wasn't in any of them. I swear, I took 3 photos. In 2 of them, it's just me sitting at a table with an empty chair next to me. In the one outside, it's me smiling with nothing beside me, like literally nothing. No blur, no shadow, just space. I thought it was a glitch. Maybe the photos hadn't saved right. I closed the app, opened it again. Same thing. I checked my backup folder. Same thing. I went to text him and tell him about it, but the conversation was gone. I mean gone. No messages, no match history. Just poof. Like I never spoke to him. I checked my recent matches. Nothing. Not even a blurred out name like when someone unmatches you. It was like his account never existed. That's when I started getting creeped out. I still had the receipt from the bar, so I knew I wasn't crazy. I had a timestamp. I called the place the next day and said I left my keys and I wanted to check if I'd come in when I thought I did. Total lie, but the bartender was cool about it. I asked if their cameras caught people coming in and out just to check the time. He said yeah and offered to show me the footage. I went in that evening. He pulled it up on his screen and we watched. At the exact time I remembered, right down to the minute I walk into the bar. I sit down at the table. I order a drink. I talk, I laugh. I look like I'm in a full conversation, but I'm alone. Like, completely alone. No one ever walks in after me. No one ever sits down. I'm just sitting there for over an hour talking to no one, gesturing across the table. Leaning in like someone's whispering something. Even taking those dumb selfies. Just me in an empty chair. The bartender kind of looked at me sideways like I was messing with him. I didn't say much, just thanked him and left. I tried finding him again on Tinder, but it was like he never existed. I searched every variation of his name, even tried setting my distance radius super low and swiping for like an hour straight. Nothing. Just the usual guys I always see. No Sam. No brown jacket. No awkward smile. At one point, I convinced myself that maybe I hallucinated him completely, like actually invented a whole person in my head. But that didn't make sense either. I still had the receipt. Still had the selfies. Still remembered the sound of his voice. How he kept tapping his fingers on the side of his glass. The way he tilted his head slightly every time I talked, like he was trying to memorize what I was saying. You don't imagine stuff like that, right? I stopped using Tinder after that. I deleted the app. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because I didn't want to risk seeing him again. I wonder what I would have done, or what he would have done. The whole thing started eating at me. Every time I passed that bar, I'd get this tight feeling in my chest like someone was watching me, like I was being studied. A week later, something even weirder happened. I was going through old photos on my phone, trying to clean things out and get my storage back, and I found an album I didn't remember making. It had no title, just a gray folder icon. Inside were 23 pictures of me. Not selfies, not screenshots. Photos of me. Most of them looked like they were taken from across the street. One of me unlocking my apartment door. One of me waiting at the bus stop, earbuds in. One where I'm inside my living room, standing by the window, holding a mug. I don't remember anyone ever being outside my place when that was taken. The timestamps line up with the weeks before I met Sam, which means someone was watching me before we ever talked. The last photo in the album was the worst one. It was a selfie, taken in my apartment, at night. Except I'm asleep on the couch. Blanket halfway off, hair all messy. The photos from above me, like whoever took it was standing right over where my TV is. I checked my front door. Locked. Deadbolt still latched. No signs of anything forced. Same with the windows. Everything was shut. I don't know how he got in, or when, or if it was even him. but I do know I live alone, and I never gave anyone my keys. I wiped my phone completely, got a new one. I still don't know how the album showed up. There were no cloud backups, no shared devices. I checked all the metadata before I deleted it. The file names were just strings of random letters, and locations were blank. The photos shouldn't have even been on my phone. It was like they were placed there. I moved a month later. I didn't tell anyone why. My friend just thought I was being my usual chaotic self, bouncing from apartment to apartment like I always do. But I picked a place with no windows facing the street, 3rd floor, only one entrance. I keep the door locked now even when I'm home. I haven't tried dating since. Every now and then I'll get tempted to re-download the apps, but I can't bring myself to do it. Not after that. And the creepiest part. A few weeks ago, I was going through my junk drawer and I found a receipt from that same bar. Dated 2 days ago. Same drink, same total. My card. But I hadn't been there. I hadn't even left my place. I keep it pinned to my fridge now just to remind myself that it actually happened. That I didn't make it all up. That Sam, or whatever he was real. At least I think he was. I don't really tell people this story anymore. It makes me sound crazy, and honestly, I still don't fully get what the end game was. But I know what I saw, and I know I didn't imagine any of it. So yeah, here's how it went down. I met this girl on Tinder named Tyla. I hadn't been on the app that long, just scrolling here and there, nothing serious. She messaged me first. Her profile wasn't anything over the top. A few pictures of her hiking, one with some friends, nothing that screamed fake. Her vibe was chill. Not too much makeup, not trying too hard. She had this subtle confidence that was kind of refreshing compared to everyone else either posting gym selfies or dog filter pics. We matched and started talking. It was mostly surface level, but it flowed easy. She'd ask me small things that felt specific, like where I liked to get coffee or if I preferred winter over summer. Stuff that seemed random at the time, but looking back, I guess it wasn't. We went out a few times, once for coffee, once for drinks, and once for this pop-up art thing she said she was into. It all felt normal. A little quiet, maybe, but nothing that set off alarms. After our 3rd date, she invited me over. That's where it all started to feel off. Her apartment was spotless, like not just clean, showroom clean. Everything was white and beige and minimalist, like an Airbnb you'd never feel comfortable actually using. No clutter, no cords, nothing plugged in unless it was hidden. Her books were arranged by size. All the spices in her kitchen were labeled and aligned. Even her soap looked untouched. It was the kind of place that didn't feel lived in. At first, I just thought she was super tidy, or rich, or both. But as the night went on, small things started piling up. There were these framed photos on one of her shelves. 6 of them. And in 3 of them I was there, just me. One was me on the bus, looking out the window. Another was me at a food truck with my hoodie half on. The last one I couldn't place, but I looked tired. I was walking somewhere at night. All of them were from angles you'd only get if you were watching from across the street or through a window. I stared at them for a while, trying not to look obvious, and I told myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe she screenshotted something from Instagram, but I don't post that kind of stuff. And these weren't pictures I'd ever seen before. I didn't ask her about them. I don't know why. I guess part of me didn't want to hear the answer. Or maybe I thought I was wrong. And if I brought it up, I'd just seem weird. Later that night, she stepped up to take a phone call. Her bedroom door was open, and I could see it from where I was sitting. Right next to her bed was another door. Plain, no decorations, just this white door with a silver handle. It had a keyhole, not like a modern lock, an actual old-school keyhole. When I asked what was in there earlier, she just said it was storage. But the way she said it was weirdly defensive, like she was ready for that question. She even stepped in front of it a little when I looked at it too long. We watched some movie after that. I don't remember much of it. My brain was somewhere else the whole time, just stuck on those photos in that locked room. She fell asleep on the couch about halfway through, and I just sat there pretending to be into the movie. At one point, I got up to use the bathroom and walked past the locked door again. I don't know what came over me, but I tried the handle. It was still locked. I could have just left it. Should have, honestly, but I didn't. I started looking around, quietly, to see if maybe the key was nearby. I opened her nightstand drawer. Nothing. Checked the bathroom. Nothing. Put my cane back to the living room. I noticed her bag sitting half-sipped near the couch. I waited until I was sure she was out cold, then slowly pulled it over and checked inside. The key was in a tiny side pocket with a little ribbon on it. The lock turned with barely a click. I opened the door as slowly as possible, not even breathing, and stepped inside. That's when I lost it. It was my room, like my room, not similar, not inspired by. It was mine, down to the details. Same layout, same navy comforter, same cracked corner of my mirror. My posters, my lamp, my exact rug with a coffee stain near the edge. Even the books on the shelf were in the same order. There was a sweatshirt on the bed that I thought I'd lost months ago. A little rip near the sleeve, same spot. I didn't understand. I still don't. I just stood there trying to figure out if I was dreaming or if maybe someone had drugged me. The air smelled like my detergent. There was a phone charger on the floor. Same kind I had, my charger. I walked over to the nightstand and opened the drawer. Inside were these little notebooks. Spiral bound, plain. I picked one up and opened it. She'd been writing about me, not just diary-style stuff. These were logs. Dates, times, what I wore, what I ate, who I talked to, what lights I turned on, what I watched. She'd written things like left window open again and moved the lamp to face the hallway. Stuff I never noticed about myself. I was in there for maybe 2 minutes before I heard her stir in the other room. I didn't think. I just ran. Didn't even shut the door behind me. I left her apartment and didn't look back. I got in my car and drove for almost an hour before I pulled over and just sat there shaking. I blocked her number. Deleted Tinder. Called the cops the next morning, but they said I didn't have anything concrete. No crime technically happened. No proof the room was mine. I never filed a report. I moved a month later. Got a new number. I started locking every window every night. I keep a chair wedged under my doorknob when I sleep now. I don't know what she wanted or what she was waiting for, but whatever it was, she wasn't done with me. Not yet. This happened last year, and I still don't totally know how to talk about it without sounding crazy. But I know what I saw. I know what happened. So, I matched with this guy on Tinder named Thomas. Nothing weird at first. His pics were normal. A couple selfies, one with his dog, one in a food truck or something. His bio was a little lame, something about hiking and good vibes, but he seemed nice enough, and I'd had way worse matches, so I gave it a shot. We messaged back and forth for like 3 or 4 days. Nothing super deep. He wasn't that funny, but he asked decent questions and wasn't overly pushy, which is rare. Eventually, we agreed to meet for drinks. The place was this low-key spot near where I work, so I felt safe. Public, lit. I showed up on time, and he was already there. He looked mostly like his pics, just a little taller than I expected. Dressed kind of plain, but not in a bad way. Just like he didn't really think about it too much. He smiled a lot. Talked in a really slow, steady voice. Nothing about the conversation stuck out, but he wasn't awkward. It was fine. That's the best word I can think of. Just fine. But something didn't sit right. He would tilt his head a little when I talked, like too far. I know that sounds minor, but it felt performative, like he was copying what listening looks like instead of actually listening. And there were these long gaps when I wasn't saying anything, and he'd just stare. Not in a creepy way exactly, just blank. Like he forgot what he was supposed to do next. Anyway, I said good night and left early, told him I was tired. And yeah, I ghosted him after that. Not proud of it, but I didn't feel like explaining why I didn't want to see him again. I didn't owe him anything after one drink. And that should have been the end of it. A couple weeks passed, and I honestly forgot about him. I was busy with work, dealing with other stuff, not even really using Tinder. But then I started noticing weird things at home. The first thing was my toothbrush. I came home one night, went to brush my teeth, and it was wet, like freshly used wet. Alive alone, I definitely hadn't brushed my teeth earlier. I remembered because I had coffee that morning and thought about brushing before I left, but didn't. But the brush was damp, like someone had just used it and set it down. I tried to explain it away. Maybe I was just misremembering. Maybe it hadn't dried from the night before. Whatever. But the next morning, it was the same thing. And the next day, too. Then I started noticing the smell. This faint cologne scent. Not mine. Not anything I owned. It would come and go, sometimes near the door, sometimes in the bathroom. I thought maybe it was drifting in from a neighbor or something. I live in a small building, kind of old, so maybe the vents were weird. Then I started locking my bedroom door at night. I never used to, but I was getting this feeling like the air in my apartment was just off. I'd wake up feeling like I hadn't really been alone. I even started taking pictures of things before I left for work, like a marker to tell if anything moved, a closet door, the kitchen drawer, my shampoo bottle. Nothing big happened, just small things. A towel in a different spot, my fridge not shut all the way, nothing I could prove. I called my landlord, asked if maybe someone had been in for repairs or something while I was out. He said no. I asked about spare keys. He said only he had one and it hadn't been used. So I changed my locks. That helped for like a week. Then one night I came home late, maybe 11 or so, and I unlocked the door and instantly felt it. That air again. That something's wrong kind of silence. I walked around the apartment. Nothing looked touched. But the window in my bedroom was cracked open. I never opened that window. Ever. It's old and sticks. And I've always been paranoid about someone climbing in, even though I'm on the third floor. I checked it twice before I left that morning. I'm obsessive about windows, but it was open. Not a lot, maybe 2 inches. Just enough. That night I called the police. They came, looked around, didn't find anything. No signs of forced entry. No prints. Nothing out of place. They were polite, but you could tell they thought I was being dramatic. They told me to get a security camera or maybe a motion light, and that was it. I ordered a camera the next day. While I was waiting for it to ship, I re-downloaded Tinder. I don't even know why. I think I just wanted to see something. Maybe make sure Thomas hadn't messaged again or something. Curiosity, anxiety, I don't know. I searched for his profile. Didn't see it at first. Then, after swiping around for a bit, there he was. Same photos, same bio. But there was a new picture, and it was taken in my room. Not like near my room, in it. You could see my bed, my throw blanket, my string lights. Stuff that I only have in that one room. He was standing in front of my mirror, holding his phone dead center in the frame like it was a mirror selfie. But I never saw him take it. Not during the date. Not ever. I stared at it for like 5 minutes. Took screenshots. Zoomed in. It was my place. No question. I reported his account and deleted Tinder again. I tried calling the cops back. Showed them the screenshots, but they said there was no proof he'd actually broken in. I didn't have a camera set up at the time, so nothing could be verified. They said I could file a report, but there wasn't much they could do. So I moved. 2 weeks later, I broke my lease and crashed with my cousin until I found a new place across town. I changed jobs. Changed my number. I haven't seen him again. No new photos, no messages, nothing else weird. But I still wake up sometimes thinking I heard something at the window. The picture was real. That's the part I keep coming back to. That wasn't in my head. He was in my room. He was standing in front of my mirror. I still think about what he was doing there. How many times he'd been there before I noticed, what else he touched, and what he was planning next. So this all started about 5 months ago. I was just getting out of a weird situationship and honestly just bored. You know how it is. Nights are slow, friends are busy, and swiping feels like a game. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I was just on Tinder out of habit more than anything. Then I matched with this girl, Laura. She stood out immediately. Her photos didn't look fake, but she was beautiful in that effortlessly cool way. Like someone you'd see reading in a dive bar, but never have the guts to talk to. Her bio was simple, just something about loving coffee and old movies. Basic, but it didn't scream try hard. I messaged her first, rare for me, and she replied in less than a minute. Not just hey either, a full sentence. Funny. I don't even remember what it was, but it made me laugh, and I remember thinking, damn, she's quick. We started messaging a lot, not just the boring stuff either. She'd actually ask good questions. Deep ones sometimes, but mixed in with weird humor and strange references. Stuff I hadn't heard in years. At one point, she quoted a line from this super obscure cartoon my sister and I used to binge as kids. It felt random, but I figured, alright, maybe it was just coincidence. Still, the vibe was there. We clicked in that way where you stop swiping altogether. After about 2 weeks of talking, we finally set a date to meet. We picked this little coffee shop just off a quiet street near downtown. Not too crowded. She was already sitting there when I arrived. I recognized her instantly, but somehow she looked even more like herself in person. No makeup, hair tied up. A kind of relaxed confidence that just made you feel like you were being watched and sized up, but in a weirdly flattering way. We ordered drinks, sat down, and everything was fine, until she started saying stuff that didn't make sense. She brought up my sister, by name. She said it casually, something like, "You and Ellie are close, right?" And I just kind of froze for a second. I hadn't mentioned my sister's name. I know for sure because I keep family stuff separate online. I don't post pictures of her, don't tag her, nothing. I asked her how she knew that name, and she just smiled and said, "You told me. Maybe you forgot." I didn't. That was the thing. I definitely didn't. I brushed it off, tried to shake it. You ever get that sick, slow crawling feeling in your stomach? Like you know something's wrong, but your brain's still trying to patch it up so you don't panic. That was me. But I didn't leave. I stayed. We kept talking. And then she brought up my dog, my childhood dog, Max. He died when I was 12. I never talk about him, like literally never. I didn't even post about him online because that was way before I even had social media. She mentioned him like it was nothing. "You must have been so sad when Max died." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. That was the point where I started to feel unsafe. I laughed it off, but inside my chest was pounding. I was trying to figure out how to get through the rest of the date without making it obvious that I wanted to leave. And then the worst part. She leaned in, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I like the tattoo on your back. The one with the trees." My heart dropped. I have this tattoo of these black, bare trees across my upper back. It's personal. I got it after a really dark time in my life. I've never posted a photo of it, not even to close friends. You can't see it unless I'm shirtless, and even then, only from behind. I laughed, but it came out wrong. Too sharp. I said something like, "How do you know that?" And she didn't answer. She just sipped her coffee and looked out the window like she hadn't said anything weird at all. That's when I decided I was done. I made up some excuse about having to meet a friend and dipped out fast. I didn't even finish my drink. As I walked to my car, I kept looking over my shoulder, but she never followed. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. I went back through our texts, our chats on Tinder. Nothing there. Nothing that hinted at any of the things she brought up. So how the hell did she know? I started checking my accounts. Facebook, Insta, old stuff. Made sure nothing was public. But everything already was private. It had been for years. I'd even messaged my sister and asked if she remembered me posting anything about Max or the tattoo. She said no. Then I remembered this weird time about 6 months ago when I saw this girl at the grocery store. I only remember her because she had this really unique jacket with old patches all over it, like Sun and 90s band logos. She kept looking at me. Not in a flirty way, in a memorizing kind of way, like she was trying to absorb something. At the time, I thought maybe she was high. But now I'm convinced that was her, Laura, before she was Laura. I kept digging, looked up her number, nothing came up. Reverse searched her Tinder pics. One of them traced back to some old photography blog from 2012. The model's name wasn't even Laura. So I called the coffee shop, asked if they had cameras, said I'd lost a wallet or something. Manager said they don't keep footage longer than 48 hours. I deleted Tinder the next day, not because I thought it would fix anything, just because the idea of her watching me through it made my skin crawl. I also stopped going to certain places for a while. I changed up my routine. Switched gyms, stopped tagging my location, just in case. That was 4 months ago. I haven't seen her again. But every now and then something happens that makes me feel like it's not over. Like I'll catch someone in a hoodie across the street just a little too still. Or I'll get an anonymous Spotify follow, weird usernames. Or I'll get these random emails with no subject, just blank messages. Once I woke up and found a Polaroid tucked under my doormat. It was a photo of my car. Parked outside my building. No note, nothing else. Just the picture. So, yeah, I don't think she ever wanted to date. I think she wanted to be in control. And maybe she still is, I don't know. But if you ever match with a girl named Laura, or she says she likes trees, or brings up your childhood dog, block her immediately. Because if she knows your back tattoo, she's already way too close.